Hey guys, what's going on? We got the Fiat here. I'm going to be doing an oil change today. So first thing you're going to want to do is get the car jacked up on the front end and get it up on jack stands. A good place to jack the car up from is from the K-member, which is right behind the oil pan. So here's your oil pan and here's the K-member. So when you're doing that, be very careful that your jack is perfectly on the K-member right there and not at all touching the oil pan. You don't want it to slip and hit the oil pan, dent or crack the oil pan or anything like that. So just be very careful. And then the K-member is also a good spot to place your jack stands. So once you get the car jacked up, get it on jack stands, get an oil drain pan ready, and then you can come down here and remove the drain bolt from the oil pan and begin draining out the engine oil. So I'm going to go ahead and set the camera down and do that. While you're doing your oil change, there's a few things that you'll need. Drain pan, very important. Possibly a breaker bar of sorts to break the drain plug loose if it's not cooperating. Ratcheting wrench and a 12mm hex socket, a 10mm hex socket, and you'll see what that's for a little later. Oil filter removal tool, doesn't have to be one like this, could be any kind. Oil filter, I'm using a Mobile one, part number is M1204A. It is quite big, that is what this car takes. Don't be alarmed that it's such a big filter. I'm using Shell Rotella T6 15W40. 15W40 is what the manufacturer recommends, so I'm going to stick with that. T6 is Rotella's full synthetic line, and I'm using Rotella because it has a higher zinc and phosphorus content, and these flat tappet engines, they need that. So Rotella is definitely a good oil to go for if you're changing the oil on one of these, or for the most part a lot of older cars. So this is what you need. Let's go ahead and get started on the oil change. Alright, so you're going to grab your 12mm hex socket and a ratchet or a breaker bar. Get that in there real nice. Break it loose, which I've already done. The oil is going to be pretty hot because you should have had the car running just a little bit so it flows better. So just don't burn yourself. So I'm probably going to get some on my hands. It's probably going to be pretty hot, but and then just let that drain. The oil is all drained out now from the oil pan, and before you start draining the oil, it is a good idea to just remove the cap from up above. The oil is all drained here now, so I'll remove the oil filter, let it drain from there a little bit more, put the oil drain plug back in. But just to show you guys real quickly, all of your cars may not still have this cover down here going all the way across, because the oil filter is right back here. If you do have this, really easy, this, two nuts on both sides, you just got to remove them and it'll come right up. So not very hard. They are 10mm, so go ahead and pop that out and then you'll have access to your oil filter. I'm going to do that right now. Alright guys, so as you can see right here, you got the oil filter. Now that that pan's gone, it's all nicely exposed, and since it's not dripping anymore, I've gone ahead and started putting the drain plug back into the oil pan right there. Start it by hand so you don't cross thread, and then go ahead and get your ratcheting wrench and tighten it down the rest of the way. I'm going to get this back in place so I can move my drain pan over this way a little bit better, so I can start removing the oil filter and let some oil leak out of there. You don't need to over tighten this or anything like that. There is a torque spec on it, and once I get the oil filter removed and drained, I'll look that up so I can let you guys know what the torque spec on the oil drain plug is. So I'm going to go ahead and get this drain pan closer this way so I can remove the oil drain, or so I can remove the oil filter and keep this rolling. So I got my oil filter removal tool. This works fairly interestingly. As you tighten down on it, it just kind of grips it. You don't really need it, you just got to break it loose. Once you break it loose, you can just remove it by hand. Oil is going to come out of here. Again, don't be like me, wear gloves. And then once you get this filter all drained out, you just put it in a plastic bag, because you could take it to like your local auto parts store, have them dispose of all the oil and give them the old filter and everything. They can dispose of all that for you. So while it drains out a little bit, I will look up what the torque specs are on the drain plug, and I'll clean my hands up a little bit. Alright, so you're going to want to grab the oil filter, get some fresh oil on your finger, rub it around the O-ring right there, and then just go ahead and screw your oil filter in. Make sure not to cross thread that, and you just want to get that hand tight, and once you can't turn it anymore, try to get a quarter turn in, and then that's it. Alright, that's enough. You got that in. And then I looked up the torque spec, but I couldn't find anything for the drain plug. Generally it's between 25 and 30 foot-pounds, so go ahead and get about 25 foot-pounds of torque on that, and then you're good. While you have the car up in the air, this is where that 10mm is going to come in handy. Go around the oil pan and tighten all the little bolts that are around it. They tend to come loose over time. Tighten them all up just like that. Go ahead and drop your car, and then you can put the oil in. I'm going to get that done, and then we'll get around to putting the oil in the car. Alright, so now that I got the shield back on covering the oil filter, everything's done, got the car lowered. I'm going to go ahead and place a funnel in here. This car takes 4 1/4 quarts of oil. Go ahead and pour that in. Run the car for a little bit, and then you might need to top it off just a little bit more. Once you're done with that, you can go ahead and put the cap back on, and you're all done. Alright guys, so I filled it up with 4 1/4 quarts of oil. I'm running the car for a little bit, and then I'm going to go ahead and take it for a spin around the block and then see if I got to top it off. I might just put a little bit in there just in case. But that's all. Now the car is done, and that is how you complete an oil change on this vehicle. Peace.